Hi everyone, what's up? This is the Etzinger ETZI hand grinder, and it's got some really interesting features to it, notably that it grinds with a rotating ring burr, so the outside burr spins and not the inside cone burr. And there are other grinders out there that use this system, famously the Baratza Sede grinders, and this comes as no surprise as Etzinger do also manufacture the burrs for the Sede as well as their own range of grinders, so it is all connected there. Now, the design choice with this means there is no drive shaft with this grinder, and no drive shaft means a slim chance at that of any burr wobbles. Now, another favorite feature to the ETZI is how fast it is to disassemble and clean. Literally, that's it to access the burrs and get completely within the burr chamber to give it a full clean, and then it's back together again. Possibly the fastest grinder ever. And we will go a little bit more into depth into that later on in the video. But when picking this grinder up, you do get the sense it is made really well and it's built to last. And speaking of lasting, I've lasted this long in the video before asking you to go ahead and smash that like button, as well as to subscribe and the bell notifications, as it does help with our YouTube channel. You won't miss out on any videos that we bring out, and I really appreciate it. So with that, and without a moment to lose, let's jump into the video. Now, the ETZI is made mostly of lightweight anodized aluminium, including the catch cup. The black accents you do see are made of FRP, which stands for fiberglass reinforced plastic. Essentially, this is a very durable grinder, and there are no parts of easy wearing or vulnerable to breakage. The full capacity to the ETZI is 30 grams, and removing that hopper lid, which is connected by magnets quite reliably, notice there is no drive shaft, so the beans just fall straight into the burrs unobstructed. You'll also find magnets under the retractable crank handle, and this handle lifts up and then slides down into the grinds chamber, making the grinder more slimline and a better fit for storage. It's important to note though that this handle does extend into the burr chamber, so when stored away, just keep that in mind when not in use. The burrs are a 32mm steel conical burr, with the outer ring burr rotating and the inner cone burr remaining stationary. Upon exit, the grounds move through an area referred to as the anti-static jig. And you can see how this helps definitely break clumps up and makes for super fluffy grinds from the grinder. The only issue from this necessary design, keeping that inner burr stationary, is that at finer grind settings, it does have a habit of clogging. So retention might become an issue, but with a couple of knocks like this, it does generally release all of those grinds. Taking a look at the grind adjustment to the ETZI, there are 88 steps shared between 23 numbers. But how fluid it is to change the grind on the ETZI, it's almost like it's a stepless grinder. Each one of those individual clicks represents 0.02 of a millimeter burr movement. And it's quite nice to have that full spectrum of grinding between espresso fine to French press coarse, all on half a turn of the adjustment wheel. And I think the EasyPresso K Plus is another one that shares that. Smaller adjustments are not made as easily with your hands, but the catch cup upside down doubles as an adjustment tool for turning the burrs, and this also comes in handy when you want to remove the burrs completely to give the grinder a clean. Taking a look at the grind performance across the full range of the ETZI, at its finest setting, it doesn't choke at all, but does get grinds out quite powderish, and these could be used for Turkish coffee. At a grind setting of 3, this is the start of the espresso range. And this moves up to around 6, and here I would use this for your mocha pots. AeroPress and Delta Coffee Press, these are around the 7 on the dial, and then pour overs comfortably from around 7 up until 13. 15 and upwards get much coarser, and for Chemex or even Mocha Masters or other batch brews, this is comfortable. And following that, you have your French press, and finally cold brewing. All right, so here's the segment where I dose out a full 20 grams of espresso beans, and I've got the ETZI set on 4, which is an espresso setting. And if there is one catch to this whole grinder, it is that it is CCW grinding. Now, I wasn't too sure what that meant when I first read it, until I started grinding. It's counterclockwise grinding. So that means it's in the opposite direction to pretty much every other grinder I've ever used. Now, if you're a left-hander maybe, or someone who's always felt like grinding clockwise felt awkward, then this grinder is going to come at a great relief to you. But for others, just be prepared that it might feel a little awkward. Just a little like it doesn't feel right to begin with, kind of like writing with your opposite hand, but after a while you do get used to it. Now, holding onto this grinder, it is quite easy to grind with. And there are two versions of this grinder. There is a regular version and also a trim. It's the trim that I'm using today. I do recommend when you use the trim that you hold just below the hopper lid here, as there is a ledge here and it's not sharp, but if you're holding over the top of it with your fingers, it is a little noticeable. Now the catch cup is magnetically attached to the body of the grinder and you can knock this off accidentally, but it doesn't feel like you're about to. And kudos for Etzinger for making the diameter of the catch cup fit nicely on top of a 58mm portafilter, perfect for when brewing espresso. All right, so now I'm going to brew an espresso using the Etzinger grinder, and I've dialed this in to do a brew ratio of a 20-30-40, and I've also got the Kinu M47 and the Comandante C40 MK4 grinder just as a comparison. I've done a few taste test comparison videos with these hand grinders. You can find that video from the link up above, and I'm going to use them as sort of a baseline as to how the coffee tastes coming out of the Etzinger. So let's just get started. All right, so what we end up with here is 3 similarly extracted coffees on 3 different hand grinders, same dose, yield, and extraction times. And I'm just gonna taste them all now. I started with the Comandante, so we'll start tasting the Comandante first. Always a thick, viscous espresso with the Comandante. Heavy body, a lot of richness, muted acidity, but like good amount of sweetness balanced with acidity. And it develops over time. The Kinu, it's a much thinner espresso. Much more sweetness, less body overall, but a little bit more clarity in the cup. A lot more sweetness that carries. It's really sweet. A thinner espresso overall, but really delicate flavor and a good amount of sweetness. I think that's the best I could say about the Kinu. And the Etzinger now. This will be interesting. Okay. Viscosity wise on the back of the spoon feels kind of like in between these two at the moment. Okay, so this is first tastings right here. Comparing it against these other 2 grinders. I would say, I think it's focusing more on the acidity of the coffee. There is some body and there is some acidity. There's not a lot of sweetness, certainly not as much as the Kinu, and not as much as even the Comandante in terms of sweetness. Much more acidity than the Comandante has. And I wouldn't say the Kinu has
focuses on the acidity as much, but the Etzinger definitely has that the acidity body balance in there. And it's carrying, it does have a nice body to it. Again, not as much as the Comandante, probably more than the Kinu. Not as much clarity as the Kinu, and probably not as much complexity as the Comandante either. So it's kind of sitting in there. You know, you can go hyper-focused on one or the other, or you can kind of sit in the middle with something like the Etzinger burrs. I think that's the best way I could probably describe it. And to talk about how easy it is to clean the Etzi, it is just a twist of that grind setting adjustment all the way coarse, like you would on the Sete grinders, and that burr carrier literally pops off into your hand. From here, using a light brush, you can wipe down those inner burrs and then the inside ring burr, and that's pretty much 99% of the grinder's inside, which is fantastic. Then placing it all back together, you're just going to be lining up the sight on the adjustment with the arrows on the grinder's body, and then tighten it finer until it grabs, and then you're done. There's no need to calibrate the Etzi, and between each one of the grinders, the grind settings are identical. It's definitely a premium hand grinder with features that support precision, accuracy, speed, consistency, and portability, and it's really easy to keep clean. So if you have any further questions on the Etzinger Etzi, or Etzi, I think I've been saying Etzi this whole video, haven't I? Apologies, that's the Australian slang for you. If you have any further questions on this hand grinder, add them in the comment section down below and we'll get straight back to you. Thanks for watching to the end of this video, and we'll see you in the next one.